everybody. I'm here today to talk about the market system, and the expectation is that when you're watching these videos at home, that you go ahead and get the notes copied into your class notes. Anytime you're talking about a college course, it's going to be very heavy on the lecture, and I do try to make this very experiential, but you're going to want to get these details down, particularly this semester because you have the opportunity to take all of your assessments at home, which means you have access to be able to use your notes. So here we go. What we're going to look at today is from Chapter 2. It is regarding the market system. And so we've talked already about scarcity and opportunity cost and the fact that every economy has to figure out how to allocate scarce resources to their citizens. So the market system is just one way to do that. It's the way we happen to do it here in the United States. But there are other systems for allocation. A few important characteristics of market systems include private property. What that means is that individuals own the factors of production or the scarce resources, the land, labor, capital, are all in private hands as opposed to owned by the government and doled out to people that way. Along with private property comes the normal types of things that you would think of with private property. You have the ability to own a home. You have the ability to have things that belong to you and prosecute people that would try to take them from you, for example. Another characteristic of the market system is freedom of enterprise, which means that, again, private citizens can start their own businesses. You also have choice. Maybe for you, you run your business one way and somebody else runs it a different way. There's not just one way to do things, and that's not in the hands of the government to decide. It's in the hands of private citizens. So choice is a really important factor when it comes to the market system. The third thing is self-interest. So within a market system, everyone is acting in their own self-interest. People that make things that make our lives better, make our lives easier, they're not doing it because they want to make our lives better and make our lives easier. They're doing it because they want to provide for themselves and their families. And so by acting in their own self-interest to provide for themselves and their families, they make other people's lives better. So we as human beings are not naturally altruistic. We're not naturally just doing things for the benefit of others. But a market system actually causes people to be altruistic, even if it's not on purpose. So by providing things for other people that make their lives better and easier, I'm acting in my self-interest, but I'm also making their lives better and easier. Competition is a next characteristic, and that has to do with the fact that generally we protect free competition in markets. We don't allow for monopolies that are formed by people buying out their competition, and this means that products are cheaper for consumers and that they are higher quality. If you don't have competition, both of those things tend to suffer. Last thing is that prices are determined in markets. So people come together to buy and sell goods and services, whether that's online or in person, virtually. So markets determine what prices are based on the ideas of supply and demand. So just to give you a perspective, when we're talking about free markets, what we mean by a free market is one that has zero government intervention. Most countries have some sort of government intervention, some sort of laws that dictate what you can and can't do. It's not completely laissez-faire or hands-off. So when we're talking about the free end of the spectrum, up here, three of the most free, economically free countries include Hong Kong, Australia, and Switzerland. Countries that are mostly free, meaning they have more government regulations, but still there's more freedom than there is regulation. That would include countries like the United States, of course, Japan and Asia, Botswana and Africa. Countries that are mostly unfree, which means here that there's more government regulation than there is economic freedom. So there are more rules that you have to follow. There's more government ownership than there is free enterprise. That would include Brazil in South America, China in Asia, and Russia in Europe. And then countries that we would call repressed, meaning that the government is actually infringing upon the freedoms of their people. That would include the I want to say autocracy of Iran. They're not a communist country, but they are ruled by a religious elite. You have Venezuela, which is a communist country, and of course North Korea, which is a communist country. So when it comes to technology and capital goods, so when we're talking about a market system, both of those things are encouraged, advanced technology as well as capital goods. And I don't know how much you pay attention to the news, but TikTok has been in the news lately because it's owned by a Chinese company that they believe are trying to mine data and get people's data and things through that app. And so there's talk about banning it here in the United States. Generally, we have more advanced technology than countries that don't have freedom, and those countries do what they can to steal that technology if they have to. TikTok's an example. Capital goods have to do with things that are used to make other goods and services, things like, again, technology, tractors when we're talking about construction, the computers that we're using to learn virtually right now, all of those things would be considered capital goods. There's also a high degree of specialization in market systems. Generally, businesses and people are encouraged to specialize in what they're best at because they do that most efficiently. That leads to a division of labor. So you don't have one person, for example, you don't have one person that makes things from scratch from the point of raw material to finished goods. We've got a division of labor. You've got the people that create the raw materials, that put them together, that sell them, and that's 3 different people doing 3 different jobs. We also have geographic specialization. So, for example, here in Elkhart, we tend to be heavy based on the RV companies as well as farming in our county, and that would be different depending on where you go and where exactly that you're living at that point. Another thing that is characterized by modern market systems is that you have active government, however, it's limited. So there are market failures. Markets are not perfect because people are acting in their own self-interest. Gone too far, that can be greed. That can become greed. It can also be abuses against workers if you think back to what this country was like before some of the labor laws, things like child labor, things like unsafe workplaces. And so the government stepped in to alleviate those market failures. We now have laws that require businesses to have certain standards when it comes to their employees. Government can also increase the effectiveness of a market system if it's used in a limited fashion. Again, nothing is perfect. We live on an imperfect planet, and so therefore a market system isn't perfect. Neither is a complete communist dictatorship perfect. Some combination of both historically has done the best. And by both, I mean free markets as well as some government intervention. So there are 3 basic economic questions that every economy must answer. Your textbook actually talks about 5. We're going to focus on these first 3. So question number 1 is how will the goods and services be produced? That has to do with specialization. That has to do with the division of labor. That has to do with geography. In a market system, all of those questions, or all of that part of number 1, is going to be answered by individual business owners. Number 2, what goods and services are produced? That is going to be whichever ones are most profitable, because businesses are seeking a profit. They're not seeking to make your life better. If they can make your life better, they will earn a bigger profit. But the answer to what goods and services will be produced is going to be what is profitable. I don't know if you guys are too young to remember, but a number of years back, for example, there was this whole silly band craze where you had those plastic bracelets that everybody was wearing. You probably wouldn't make too much money now if you're trying to sell silly bands, because that is no longer profitable. People don't want to buy those things anymore. And so there's what we call creative destruction, where new products are coming in and old products are being phased out all the time. The third question is who will get the goods and services? And in a market system, we answer that with whoever can pay for them. So we have some people that have a lot of means, some people that don't. Other economies might answer this by saying the government gets the goods and services and then doles them out to different people. So again, we're going to focus on these first 3. How will the goods be produced? We're going to be looking for ways to minimize the cost per unit by using the most efficient technique. So businesses have an incentive to do this, because the more cheaply they can produce a quality product, the more profit that they're going to make. So max efficiency is what will be the answer to how will goods be produced. What will be produced? Again, goods and services that create a profit. You're not going to make something no one wants to buy or that is cost prohibitive. Who will get the output? consumers with the ability and willingness to pay for it. So one criticism of a market system or capitalism is that that there are classes. You have the haves and the have-nots. People that would defend a capitalist or market system would say if you have freedom to choose, then you can be upwardly mobile. If you are born into a situation that's a sort of have-not situation, you have opportunities in a mostly free country to further your education, further your skills, and then be upwardly mobile. Other economies might answer that by, like I said, say the government gets it, and then they get to decide how to dole those things out. An important concept that is related to the market system is known as the invisible hand. So in 1776, Adam Smith, who is known as the father of economics, published a book called The Wealth of Nations. And the other thing that was happening about the same point in time was that the Declaration of Independence was written. And it was not a coincidence that these two things happened at the same time. Both Adam Smith and his contemporaries here in the United States, people like Thomas Jefferson, John Adams, George Washington, they were all being influenced by Enlightenment philosophers. These people who said the best way for humans to live is through freedom, that people are born with certain rights just by virtue of being human. That sounds normal to us today because that is the situation that you've been raised in. It was not the norm back in 1776. So Adam Smith was looking at these ideas through the lens of the economy, saying rather than a few people controlling everything, we should be able to have freedom within lots of places to be able to do things. So he talked about the market system. Like I said, he's known as father of economics. 3 virtues that he identified were efficiency, incentives for people, as well as freedom. His idea of the invisible hand is this idea that when you act in your own self-interest, you make other people's lives better. I've already referred to that several times in these notes, but that is a term that he coined as the invisible hand. It's as if an invisible hand is pulling the strings. You don't have to worry about whether the gas station is going to have Doritos when you stop after school. You are sure that that's going to happen because those people, those managers at the gas stations have worked in their own self-interest to make sure the stuff is stocked. If it gets low, they call their Frito-Lay rep and make sure to refill those Doritos. That's the invisible hand at work. All right, so the other type of system that is prevalent in the world is known as a command system. So command systems occur where the government controls everything, and they have varying amounts of freedom. Examples where these have occurred in the past include the Soviet Union, former countries in Eastern Europe, Soviet bloc countries, as well as China today. For the most part, the system has been a failure. And the biggest reason is because of a coordination problem. There is no incentive for people to produce. The only incentive is obedience. So government planners are trying to design everything, trying to plan for everything, but they're not, they're governing from the center, and they're not good at shifting course. You think about how quickly life changed over the last 6 months. If we didn't have free markets where people could make money to produce masks and the government didn't plan for the right amount of masks, we'd be in trouble. We wouldn't be able to go back to school because there'd be a shortage of masks. So that coordination problem exists in a command system because the government is slow to act. They set these output targets. If they're wrong, there's a shortage or a surplus. You also have the incentive program. So if there's a shortage or surplus in a market system, what will happen, if you're a business with all kinds of stuff sitting on the shelves, what's the logical thing for you to do? You want to get rid of it, you lower the price. The government sets prices in command systems. And so there's no adjusting the price for surplus. Things just sit on the shelves and don't get sold. The opposite is also true. If there's a shortage, you may raise the price, and that doesn't happen in a command system. All right, so that's all she wrote for Chapter 2. Make sure that you go back and read through that. You can take additional reading notes if you want. There's also guided reading for you to complete. And if you've got questions, reach out via text or email and let me know. I'll see you next time you're back at school.